Thank you for joining us today here on Blue Monday. That's right, today, January 20th, the third Monday in January, is named the saddest day of the year due to the holidays being over, financial challenges, and let's not forget the weather. So today here on Rogers TV Kickback, we are going to shine a light on the struggles that are happening right here in our community around mental health, addiction, and homelessness in the London region. My first guest is Dave Small, and he is a mental health educator with the Canadian Mental Health Association. Thanks so much for being here today, Dave.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, well, we have lots to chat about, and I'm sure you can educate all of us.
I will do my best.
Well, we'd love to learn about your organization. And firstly, what kind of work and support does CMHA offer to the community?
Well, it runs the complete gambit from probably our most sought-after service is the crisis service that runs out of our Crisis and Addiction Centre. It's a partnership with Addiction Services Thames Valley in London. It's at 648 Huron Street. And that is probably one of the areas that is first point of contact for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's not even through phone call that they might initiate it. Sometimes the people may end up having their first experience, sadly, with London Police Services, and then oftentimes once they realize that the situation could be best serviced by going to the Mental Health Crisis Center, that's what they'll end up taking somebody, right? So, and we have a lot of people who call in there as well, because sometimes people can't get to the Crisis Center, which, by the way, is open 24 hours, 7 days a week. People can go there anytime and within a relatively short period of time be sitting in front of a mental health professional with whatever might be going on. And we always encourage people to err on the side of caution. Yeah. Don't wait around and, the old adage is don't suffer in silence. Reach out and get help. But if you can't make it to the Crisis Center at 648 Huron Street, you can also call the Reach Out number, which is, again, direct access to a mental health professional. It is staffed by 3 CMHAs in the area, so CMHA Middlesex, CMHA Elgin and St. Thomas, and also CMHA Oxford and Woodstock. So despite the fact that you may be calling and getting a mental health professional outside of your catchment area, you will still get tremendous support through that phone contact.
Right.
And if necessary, if you are calling from outside the geographic location, the call can be warmly transferred to a crisis response team in your area, and then they can go out and see an individual in their home, at a coffee shop, wherever. So, that is probably one of our major services.
Yeah.
We've got housing programs, we've got ongoing community support, case management support.
So you're working with a lot of partners in the community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was going to say, one of the reasons for doing this show is to create awareness and to end and break stigmas, because there seems to be a lot of stigma around mental health issues, even though almost every one of us or someone we know
one in four Canadians will experience a major mental health and or addiction issue at some point in their lives.
And none of us would have difficulty going to the doctor to get medication for our heart or for any physical ailment. Yet when it comes to mental health, it seems like it's a harder issue for us to face.
Well, as a mental health educator, I am finding the younger generation now, especially when I go to high schools, and this is a heartening fact for me, is the fact that they are a lot more educated and open and comfortable talking about mental health related issues. So that's
a good thing.
That is an amazing thing, actually, right? So I think there's a lot, there's public initiatives like Bell Let's Talk. I think the message is slowly getting out and reaching those young people. So there's some hope and optimism, but there still is a lot of work to be done for sure, especially for men, sadly, right? Because, you look at suicide rates between the ages of 40 and 59, it is the highest incidence of suicide for men at that age group. So it really is hitting that particular population very, very hard. And for young people, it's the second leading cause of death between 10 and 29-year-olds.
So that's why it's so important for us to have these kind of conversations.
Absolutely.
So you also offer a lot of different programs and workshops. I know one of them is Bounce Back.
Yes.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
I certainly can.
Can you cover it a little?
Yes. So, Bounce Back, for a lot of people out there who are, living with anxiety and mood-related issues, it can be really difficult to find a therapist. So Bounce Back provides free online therapy sessions, and it's just
so you don't have to go anywhere.
You don't have to go anywhere.
Okay.
There are modules. It's done electronically or over, through the phone. But it is a great opportunity for people to get help that otherwise maybe wouldn't get it. And for a lot of times, those types of therapy sessions are not covered. I mean, unless you've got some type of employment with employee assistance programming, insurance benefits, you're out of pocket. And for some of the people who we work with, they're on fixed incomes, ODS or Ontario Disability Support Program or Ontario Works. They just can't access those services. So it's a tremendous opportunity for people to get that type of help. Talk therapy, it's cognitive behaviorally therapy based, so it gives people an opportunity to really learn some tangible skills to be able to cope with their mental health challenges, for sure.
And as a mental health educator, you're telling me you've been working in this field for 30 plus years.
Yes.
So you've been in the front lines, and you've also been in more the administrative roles as well.
Yeah, so I just want to correct you there. So front well, we refer to it as direct service, right? I mean, sometimes the old adage about front line was almost like it was a bit combative, right? And so I mean, but just the terminology is important, right, for us, right?
For sure.
And we just talk about death by suicide as opposed to someone who's committed suicide.
Yeah,
we just don't like those value judgments related to people who are struggling and living with some challenges, right? So, anyways.
No, absolutely. But I mean, you've been in worked directly with.
Yeah, still work for the crisis service in St. Thomas, CMHA Elgin as well, right? So I have a lot of direct service opportunity, and still feel very passionate about the work that we do. And the interesting thing too is that I think we were about to get into the conversation around how to support somebody who might be struggling with.
Absolutely.
And I think for a lot of the individuals who we have contact with, say through the crisis service, through the reach out phone line, a lot of it has to do with just being compassionate and sensitive and validating what someone is experiencing. That is often the first and most impactful step in terms of helping somebody understand that they're not alone. The situation they're going through is not that unique, although it is their own personal experience, and we understand that that's their journey. But there is people out there who are willing in a compassionate way to support them and also give them avenues and resources where they can get support and get some help.
Right, because it is hard to reach out for help.
Oh, it is, absolutely.
For almost anybody.
Yeah. It's interesting. I have a lot of conversations with individuals, especially when sometimes we'll get walk-ins at St. Thomas Elgin General Hospital with the crisis service. And it's a pride thing. There's a level of shame that people attach to it. And we try and turn that narrative around and indicate to the individuals that by identifying and having some personal insight that they need help and are reaching out for it, that really is coming from a position of strength and self-awareness.
Absolutely.
And I can't tell you how many times that really has a significant impact on people, changing that internal narrative so that they understand that, I am capable and able to get the help that I need in order to sort of have some improvement with regards to my circumstance, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That can be really significant for people to sort of...
Yeah, changing that mindset, right?
It's huge.
Yeah. And I noticed too on the website that you have programs for people like Safe Talk and the first aid program.
Mental health first aid,
mental health first aid, because I always think about, well, you would think about first aid sometimes, the CPR course, but this is the mental health version of that, which is extremely important. I think even for a parent.
Absolutely. I mean, if in a perfect world, we would encourage every citizen to take CPR and first aid. Well, mental health first aid is no different. Right. We also have an extensive program now for mental health works program, which deals with mental health in the workplace specifically. So I would suggest that every company, whether it be in the private or public sector, take a mental health first aid course just to sort of help educate the workforce and individuals, because it's going to spill over not only into their professional lives but into their family lives, right? So having that basic knowledge and understanding goes a long way to being able to sort of first identify that there's a concern or an issue, and then how best to support those individuals, especially the ones that matter most, right? Your family members, obviously.
Do you think that's something that could potentially at some point be mandated for companies to do? Because I know that it's mandated first aid CPR.
Sure.
And it seems just as important, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, right? And but I think, whether it's legislated or not, the evidence is there to indicate that, companies who are aware and sensitive get a greater level of production from their employees, right? There's a culture there that exists so that employees stick around longer, there's less turnover, and before long there's individuals who want to work for those companies,
right,
who are dealing with mental health in a respectful, dignified, responsible way, right? So
yeah.
I think there's enough incentives there for businesses to take it seriously without having to legislate it. I think there's legislation certainly in place where people don't get dismissed inappropriately,
right,
because of mental health and or substance
because we know that
issues.
does happen.
We know that does happen,
yeah.
right? Right now, as we're sitting here, 200,000 Canadians are off work specifically related to mental health or addiction-related issues on a weekly basis.
200,000, yeah.
The Canadian economy $52 billion
wow.
a year. So if you're not an immediate sort of stakeholder with regards to having someone close to you, understand just as a Canadian that it has an impact on us, right? All of us.
Absolutely. And with regards to volunteering and the people within the community, if someone's watching and they want to get involved, how could they do that? How does that work?
It's really quite simple for us, right? We've got a volunteer coordinator, Alina Needham, at our 534 Queens Ave site. So again, our website is a rich resource, both for registering for those particular courses that you happen to mention,
yeah.
but also to seeking those volunteer opportunities, right? So 519-668-0624 would be the number. You get into the reception link there, and then they would identify where the volunteer person's extension is, and then you can make overtures in that regard.
Right.
You can work directly with our clients or work in an administrative role. We have something for everybody, I guess, in terms of giving back to the community.
Yeah.
My Sister's Place, another program and service, very important one for us, is always looking for
My Sister's Place?
Yeah,
okay.
for volunteers, right?
Yeah.
Arguably works with the most marginalized segment of our population, right? Women only, probably service 200 women on a daily basis. And they're always looking for, compassionate, well-meaning women who can come there and help out and lend their talents to in a number of capacities. So.
Okay. And so what are the biggest challenges, would you say, that CMHA faces as far as getting to the people you need to get to, sharing the information?
Well, you know what, I guess it still is that issue around stigma, right? There still is the barriers for people. And I don't know whether it's, some of it's ignorance, some of it's just, not being aware. I think there's a lot of, people feeling self-conscious about asking for help, like we talked about before. So I think we're our struggle, I think, a little bit is normalizing the narrative, right?
Yeah.
Really trying to
It really is a funny thing, this stigma.
Yeah.
Like it just...
And we're really trying to sort of send a message to people that it's not okay to suffer in silence, that you need to reach out. And you know what? It's as simple as talking to your family doctor, right? People, I think, want to overcomplicate the process. And it really doesn't have to be that complicated. And a lot of times, it's going to somebody who you trust. It doesn't even have to be a mental health professional initially, right? Brother, mother, best friend, partner.
Right.
Doesn't make any difference. I'm struggling. I'm not feeling well.
Yeah.
And we would just suggest...
And allowing yourself to acknowledge that as well.
And just suggest that people err on the side of caution. I mean, it might not be a major mental health issue, but if you're struggling emotionally, something's going on, right? And you probably need to get that checked out. And if it doesn't seem to be anything significant in terms of length of time, you're still... I
was going to ask you that, if there's like a specific kind of length of time when someone should feel concerned about how they're feeling, or...
No, I would suggest, given the nature of how things can spiral out of control fairly quickly, I would suggest that people err on the side of getting help sooner than later. I mean, there'd be lots of information on the internet around length of times and when is a disorder versus when am I just going through some general anxiety issues related to life. Well, none of us are clinicians in that regard, and we need to see somebody to help us determine whether or not this is a significant issue that might need therapy, might need, maybe some medication or combination of the two, or might just need time to get over it, right? But I got to tell you, a lot of people wait too long, right? And end up in a lot worse off situation. And sometimes, I know you've got some speakers who are going to be coming on and talking about substance use, and this is always a bit of a chicken-egg situation for a lot of our clients. Probably somewhere between 60 and 70% of the clients that we have provide services to have a co-occurring issue with mental health and substance use. And again, it's sometimes that self-medicating component to it. How do I cope with some of the anxiety that I'm experiencing? As we know, alcohol is a depressant, so it can exacerbate and make present circumstances, although it can alleviate them temporarily, it will make the situation worse, right? And then we have the flip side of that with some of the lingering issues around the opiate epidemic that we have. We have a lot of individuals in our city right now who are using crystal methamphetamine as a means to sort of cope with day-to-day life, and that presents a whole different circumstance with regards to the onset of a psychotic episode. So again, you've got substance use leading to mental health related issues, and then you've got mental health issues that can lead to substance use issues.
And what advice would you give to someone who might have someone close to them, a family member or a friend who's suffering potentially from a mental health issue?
Well, I would really suggest that first of all that they just make themselves available to them, right? Try and listen to whatever is being said to them in a non-judgmental fashion. And we know that there's a lot of, familial history with some of these issues. If people aren't aware of it or not, there is a genetic predisposition, right? So it's important to know your family history. But also, too, just to be open and available to people. That validation is so important. Just to say to somebody, wow, it sounds like you're going through a really difficult time. I couldn't imagine how difficult that must be, right? And just sort of let them know that you're with them in the moment. And then sort of, again, listen.
Without judgment.
Exactly. Don't rush along, right? The issue around suicide risk may come up, right? And not to be overtly, fearful and worried about having that conversation, because it's better to talk about it than to avoid the elephant in the room, right? And from that point forward, you just sort of go through the journey together and say, listen, let's look at some resources. How can we help you? I'll join in that process with you. I don't want you to feel alone and isolated any more than you have. And to extend the appreciation for
sharing that.
Exactly. It must have taken a lot of courage to come forward with how you're feeling, right? And I want to make sure you get the help that you need in order to feel better about your present circumstance.
Thank you so much, Dave. This is really amazing, important information.
Absolutely.
No, and if someone is feeling like they're in need, how do they reach out to you?
Well, the reach out line, it's 519-433-2023, and that is the first point of contact for people. That's the crisis service, and they will be talking to a mental health professional within minutes of being on that phone.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the work that you do.
You're welcome. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming to speak with us today.
You're welcome.
All right, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Depression feels like all my bones got replaced with extremely heavy rocks, and it feels like it's never gonna end.
When I first was within the Bounce Back program, I had a lot of feelings of just overwhelm from the day-to-day, from anxiety to just waking up in a panic.
I benefited from Bounce Back because I needed that support and love and validation, and to help me feel like I wasn't alone as these huge changes were happening in my life. When I was using the Bounce Back program, I was transferring schools, so I was feeling really alone, disconnected from my friends, and wanting some help and support through those feelings of anxiety and loneliness, and that was something I found through the Bounce Back program.
With the program, there's different ways that you can do it, so that we have the online workbooks with a coach. We also have the workbooks that are physical that we send to you in the mail. And we do have the online program without a coach. We really structure it so that it really fits you.
It was a very social dynamic of listening to what was really on my mind and heart at the time, and to be able to have someone that wasn't a counselor, but someone who was the coaching dynamic, able to allow you to see what your goals were with your mental and social health, and allowing you to support that experience.
In my teens and early 20s, I had lots of issues around low mood and anxiety, depression, so absolutely I could relate, and that was a big piece that drew me to being a coach of the Bounce Back program, is having been there and experienced that. they can expect. Connecting with someone that cares and someone that is knowledgeable in the tools that they'll be learning as they're incorporating this into their lives.
You know, you're not alone in this experience. It's something that I think a lot of youth really begin to kind of navigate, that they're like, oh, none of my friends seem like they're having this problem, like, why is it me? And again, just that language that it's like, you know, we're here, and we're here for you.
However you are right now, even if it doesn't feel like it, there's strength in you for moving forward every day. There's resilience in you for still being here. And with support and love, you can get to a much happier and much healthier place for yourself.
Welcome back. My next guest is Brona Morgan. She is the Director of Bereaved Families of Ontario. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. We're trying to create more awareness about the important issues that our community is facing. And I'd love for you to tell us more about Bereaved Families of Ontario and Southwestern Ontario and what you offer the community.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much for the chance. Bereaved Families of Ontario has been operating in Ontario for over 40 years now. Started in Toronto with a group of 4 wonderful mothers who were looking for a way to kind of support each other after they had experienced the death of their children.
Right.
And found that there just wasn't, there was no place that they could really go and feel that they were understood. And so that's the service model that we have been operating on for the past 42 years in Southwestern Ontario. Our affiliate, originally called Bereaved Families of London, started up in, I think, we just had our 35th anniversary last year.
Wow.
And again, it was based on a need that we found for support services and kind of a peer support network for people who had lost children. And then from there, over the years, we have developed new services for children who had lost parents.
Well, we were just speaking about this, like in some way, shape or form, everyone is bereaved and has been in some way in their life, right?
Exactly. And so we've taken what we have learned from working with parents over the years, and the real benefit that comes from being just around people who really understand and have walked that walk, and kind of rolled that out into new programs for, say, siblings who have lost somebody, you know, their first best friend. And so being around other people that have that same experience, it's different from the way a parent feels when they lose a child. And so again, siblings just really didn't have a place to go to get together with other siblings and the way they experienced the loss of a brother or sister. So we've rolled out programs like that over the past few years, as well as a lot more programs for children who have lost a parent or even a close caregiver or, again, a sibling in the family, because they're again, they end up going back to school, or they end up interacting with kids in other places, and they feel very isolated because they feel like there's nobody around that really gets it. And just bringing these kids together in a group of other children who have been through something similar, I can't say enough good about how much it's done for my children, and being in operations for the last year and also being a member of the board for the past 7 years now, just to see how much good they get from just knowing that it's not just me.
You know what I was going to say? I think it's that feeling like you're the only one who's suffering, or you're the only one who's lost a parent. Is a horrible thing for people to go through. Like, children need to be around other kids who have experienced that loss.
Yeah, so the children's program is really close to my heart, obviously. I've had my kids through it a few times. I'm a bereaved mother, so I lost my daughter 10 years ago. Well, just over 10 years ago now. Her name was Violet, and she lived for 3 days. I've also lost my parents over the last 5 years as well. And just seeing how much the kids get out of being in that environment. Like, they can really say, you know, speak truths and talk in a way that even they can't talk in front of their parents, because they can sense that their parents are grieving as well.
Right, and they don't want to hurt them anymore.
Yeah. And then there's so many other programs that I think are really important that we really take I think, leadership in the province on. We have wonderful support groups for people who have experienced miscarriage or pregnancy loss. even throughout the whole journey. So when they're trying to, thinking about start trying again to have another child, those programs are so beneficial.
I was going to say that, that is such an incredible program, because if you are a woman who's ever had a miscarriage, it's not something that people really talk about.
Yeah.
Right? And there's not a lot of, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of support around you at the time. People are like, get back to work, get back,
Yeah.
So to be able to support women in those stages, getting back into...
Yeah, exactly. And I know this firsthand as well, because I'm also a multiple miscarriage mom. And even I know statistically that many of my friends have probably gone through the exact same thing as me, but it's even among your small friend group, sometimes it's not something that we talk about as well. So a real big part of what I've been doing over the past few years is trying to bring this into the conversation. I know it's sad. All of these experiences are very sad experiences.
But they're life.
Exactly.
Unfortunately.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
That is the one uniting factor that we all have.
Yes.
Everybody has this one thing in common.
Yes.
Regardless of who you are, where you live, who you love, everything.
Yeah.
We all have
where
this
you're from,
in common.
It does not matter.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
It doesn't discriminate. And so it's obviously it's a sad thing, but it is a way.
Unifying as well, right?
It is. And so I think when we get comfortable sharing this and talking about this, I feel like we have an opportunity here to really kind of bring people together, because this is the one unifying factor for everybody.
Absolutely, and to help children grow in a healthy way, because their lives are going to continue on. They have their whole future ahead of them, and if they're not able to speak about what they're going through, that's only going to cause difficulty in their lives in the future.
Yeah, I agree, and I think almost anybody who works in any part of social services or any support service organization will say that if we can serve people when they're younger, it's a lot easier. The investment of time and effort with young people, the benefits of that are so great, because we develop maybe not the healthiest coping strategies as we go through life. So if we can serve our kids when they're going through these really tough times, that's going to have long-term effects that really benefit even the resource crunch that's on the healthcare system right now.
It'll affect the economy. Essentially, it'll affect everything. Really.
Yeah. And so I like to think of what we do as preventive mental health care, because grief is not a mental illness. It is a normal part of life.
Absolutely.
So the reactions that we have, the having trouble getting out of bed, maybe not eating, maybe not want to be social at all for a while, just those feelings of isolation, all of that is normal. It's not a mental health problem.
Right.
But what happens is if you end up being isolated in this way and you can't talk about your feelings, there is the potential that grieving people can develop symptoms or real mental illnesses like depression, like PTSD. What I believe that Bereaved Families offers through our peer-to-peer support programs is preventive mental health care. So
I was going to ask you that, what is the effect that you see on the kids that you work with and the families that you work with?
Yeah, I think that just to see them come into the office, or just most recently here in southwestern Ontario, we ran a program through Full Circle Ranch, so we were working with therapy animals as well. And to see the difference between, I don't know what to expect, I don't know these people, I'm going through a hard time, I don't want to talk about this. And within the course of 5 weeks, this group becoming cohesive and being able to share their feelings with each other, and then also to leave that group and be able to share their feelings with their parents and with their other siblings and with their peers outside of the group, they have a level of comfort with the concept of dying that you don't see in many adults.
Right.
So if we can really be serving our children and getting them comfortable with these conversations and supporting them through these incredibly hard times in their lives, the benefits are astronomical.
Yeah, and I was looking at your website, and I love that you also speak to friends who have coworkers who are potentially bereaved. Like, you talk about all the different kind of roles out there. If you work with somebody, if you know somebody who's bereaved, how to speak to them.
Yeah.
Because that's a big piece, right?
Yeah. I think that's something that we've been trying to work on in the last couple of years as well, is bringing what we understand about what's the right thing to say, what's the right way to talk to us, what is a way that makes us feel a little more comfortable, because generally nobody wants to feel uncomfortable with but
and it's hard to find the right thing to say for a lot of people, right?
And so, we have, I have experience talking about this. There are many peer supporters within our organization, and generally everybody that works or volunteers for bereaved families is a bereaved person, but we go through a training program just to make sure that what we're doing is helpful to those people who are our peers, newly bereaved coming into the organization. But ultimately, one of the benefits of talking to people at bereaved families about grief, if you want to support a friend, is that you can bounce your ideas off us, try it out, and we can tell you, yes, that's helpful, or yes, that's not helpful. I don't want people to feel uncomfortable around people like us, because we're all people like us. And so I don't think you want to feel bad about it or saying the wrong thing, and I don't want to, be harmed by that thing. So let's just talk about it. Let's
and open it up. And
yes,
absolutely.
Because it's going to happen to everybody.
Yeah, at some point in your life, right?
That's
everybody.
Right. Yeah, and so I think there's a real benefit to giving these talks in the workplace, in institutional settings like schools. A lot of wonderful crisis teams come in when there's a death in a school, for example. But what if we could actually be creating grief-informed workplaces and institutions so that people don't necessarily need a crisis intervention, because these things are going to happen? What if we're just prepared?
Consistently supporting.
For that, yes, and that environment. So that means that that person that experiences the loss can feel comfortable coming back to work and not thinking like, oh, there's just been like this giant
this is crisis management situation.
As opposed to this is just a normal part.
Life.
This was a part of my life. And so I think that's part of one of the things we're advocating for right now is more education and just let's just get comfortable talking about this.
Yeah. I saw something on your website about a memory garden, and I'm wondering if you can talk about that a little bit.
That's probably one of my favorite things, because I'm a runner as well. And so that is my favorite running destination. It's in Springbank Park here in London. We have a memory garden, and a few of our other affiliates also have memory gardens in various places around the province, because we do have 11 affiliates across Ontario. Ours is in Springbank Park. It is right now composed of two beautiful stone walls with marble engravings on top with the names of many beloved people who have died. So my daughter's name is on there. The walls are full, and so right now there are some talks going on with the wonderful people from City of London. We also received a great grant this year, or just in the past year, from the Sifton Family Foundation to develop some new type of structure or monument in the garden so we can add more names, because obviously it's a real it may not seem like it, but it's a real joy to be able to see those names together and written down for a parent like me. I know joy doesn't necessarily sound like a word.
No, I get it, but you that connection is there forever, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's such a beautiful place. Like it's beautiful in any weather. So if you have the ability to get out there even in the winter time, it's just a lovely place to, be with the spirit of these people that are so beloved, and especially for children who are very small, like my daughter who only lived for 3 days, just to see her name and know other people are seeing her name and know about her is so important to grieving people. Just to know that those people that were so important to their lives are not forgotten.
Absolutely.
So say their name, see their name, read their name. It means a lot.
I love it. It sounds like a beautiful place.
It is, yeah. So I encourage anybody who loves to run or loves to walk or hike just to get out there and enjoy nature and have a visit to our garden. It's open obviously all year round, and we do also, the London affiliate runs a butterfly release.
I saw that. It looked lovely.
Yeah, so every June we visit the garden and, read a few poems and have new names engraved on the wall, and also release live butterflies in memory of people that we love. So there are so many lovely events that happen over the course of the year, in addition to, what you expect from a support organization. So group support and individual intakes where you can come in and talk to a trained bereaved families volunteer, who is a peer, so somebody who understands what you've been going through.
I was going to ask you about that. If somebody has experienced a loss and needs support and wants to reach out, what are the steps in doing that for them?
So generally people will call into an affiliate. So here in London, the affiliate will take phone intakes or email intakes, and then you will come into the office and just have a meeting with somebody that has gone through a similar situation as you have. So we do our best to kind of match people up with, but grief is grief. So you're going to be talking to a bereaved person who has been through the training, And from there, generally, people either try out a support group, so a closed support group that you'll be with the same group of people for a 6 to 8 week period, or there's regular drop-in meetings, and then there's special events that are kind of scattered throughout the year that have a memorial aspect, and a lot of them have a really fun aspect as well.
Right.
Like the butterfly release, it's a memorial event, but it is also really fun to be outside with your whole family out in nature and seeing these butterflies
and
get
celebrating
released.
the people that you love.
Exactly.
Right?
There's memorial walks, we have a run, there's a golf tournament, and then there's some things that are just for fun, like a purse party that operates every year. I think it's late October, and it's just about the shopping.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming to speak with us today.
I appreciate it very much.
We appreciate it.
Yeah.
And if people want to learn more, the website the website for Bereaved Families of Ontario?
So our provincial organization, it's bereavedfamilies.net.
Okay.
If you're here in London, it's bfolondon.ca.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Brona.
Thanks so much for having me. And
Thank you.
Vanessa.
All right, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Seeing her family overcome mental health issues has enabled Joy Shu to realize the importance of positivity and having open conversations about mental health.
I think it's really important to just keep the conversation going. We really need to just keep talking about it. And just like how I see it is just like when you get a cut on your arm, if you don't do anything about it, it'll just keep getting worse. But when it's there and you have a cut on your arm, of course you're gonna go get it treated. And similarly to a mental illness, once it's there, a lot of people aren't able to seek the help that they need because of the stigma. And I think if we are to continue talking about it, continuing to learn about it, what it is, how we can do to help ourselves and how we can do to support others, that would really make a difference in essentially being able to catch it while it's still early on and being able to just face it with the right tools and right support and to not face it alone.
And not facing it alone is exactly what Joy's mission has become. Through her youthful energy and ambition, Joy became motivated to spread mental health awareness in her school. She introduced Wellness Week, a week dedicated to spreading kindness and promoting physical and mental health.
I really wanted to start Wellness Week, and Wellness Week has the purpose of raising awareness for mental health as well as raising funds for Do It for Darren, but also just the idea of spreading kindness and also promoting physical wellness, because all those things are really critical to overall mental health.
Joy can often be found walking through the halls of her school, posting messages of kindness on lockers, promoting the many resources available to youth. She's an avid promoter of the Royals Healthy Minds app, and she's also a staunch advocate of the mental and physical benefits of yoga. Next fall, when she leaves high school for university, Joy plans to continue her mission of kindness and hopes that others join her in an effort to create a happier and healthier future.
Welcome back. My next guest is Shea Dehinsa. She is manager of sexual health for the Middlesex London Health Unit, and Brian Lester, who's the executive director of Regional HIV/AIDS Connection. Thank you so much for being here today with me.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and now I know you two work closely together on some initiatives.
Yes.
Could we specifically start talking about CarePoint and tell us about that?
Absolutely. CarePoint is the consumption treatment service that we're operating here in London, and it started as an overdose prevention site back in 2018, February 12th of 2018. We launched after the Middlesex London Health Unit pulled together an application as the province was looking at strategic efforts to respond to the opioid crisis in Ontario.
Right, and you were the first fully funded or provincially funded site?
We were the first provincially funded overdose prevention site, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what has it meant for the community?
Well, I think one of the things is back in 2017, we were actually looking at having a permanent supervised consumption facility. And so it was very educational to have community consultations, because what we learned is what we had an opportunity to educate the community of kind of what was happening, right? There was overdose deaths, there was increase in infectious diseases, there was multiple problems, public disorderly drug use. And so I think through those consultations, we also got to hear from the community about how important it was to have wraparound supports, and that, you know, we don't want just an injection site. We actually want individuals to access care when they're ready, or health services. And many of these individuals don't have any relationship or access any of these services. So that was something that was very important to anyone, all these community organizations that worked very closely with us throughout the process.
And I think in our commitment to working well with the community, like an overdose prevention site did not require all of those wraparound supports, but we decided, let's open a Cadillac model of an overdose prevention site, and let's make sure we have all of the community partners that will engage with the service to provide those wraparound supports. So not only are people coming through the door getting support for safer injection, if you will, but they also can say, you know, I want to talk about making changes to my drug use. I want to talk about stopping drug use. Or I need to get an HIV test. And then you have organizations like the Addiction Services of Thames Valley, London Intercommunity Health Centre, the Middlesex London Health Unit, and others that are on site to respond to those inquiries and requests from the marginalized folks that are coming through our door.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so you said the wraparound program, so that's a lot of community partners involved. Can you talk about some of the other partners that help in, I know you did mention some of them, but like, so for instance, if someone's dealing with like homelessness, like how are they helped when they come to the center?
Yeah, well, we triage well with London Cares.
Yeah.
We have Addiction Services Thames Valley on site if people want to have addictions counseling and support, or maybe do an intake that they can then become engaged at Addiction Services Thames Valley. That can happen on site. We're also looking at providing, you know, I would say culturally appropriate services for members of Indigenous community as identify. So we work closely with the Southwestern Ontario Aboriginal Health Access Centre. They're on site as well, building that capacity to respond well. So it's a whole range of responses to folks depending on what they need, including housing, including testing, including addiction support, and referrals to treatment as well.
Right.
And I think listening to what the clients are, you know, these services aren't forced onto the client. This is when they feel comfortable and say, you know what, I'm actually thinking about housing, or I'm actually thinking about addiction services, or I'm not thinking about anything, I just actually want to connect with someone. So I think that's the key, is having the service available when they're ready.
When they're ready.
And I you know, we do, you know, stats are very important to us, I mean, but also the client experience. And we've had a couple opportunities. So, you know, just since the site's open, there's been over 2,000 referrals to these programs, right? And even just
very needed in London.
Yeah, and then it speaks to that. That's what the clients, they are wanting this care, right? And I think that's very important. And I also think, you know, we've done an evaluation of the site. So the site was open, and there was an evaluation conducted, and getting that client feedback of how important that service is to them. They feel respected, they feel cared for, they feel safe, and it also gives us an opportunity to educate them on safer injection practices, which then decreases infectious disease, which is a big role of public health as well.
Right, right. And is there one site in London, or is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So right now we are situated at 186 King Street at the Regional HIV/AIDS Connection Office, and that's where the overdose prevention site opened. And so we transitioned from an overdose prevention site to a ongoing annualized funding consumption treatment service where we rebranded CarePoint. We started that transition, and it came to kind of a complete cycle of, we're running 12 hours a day, 365 days a year, and that essentially started on August 5th of 2019. So we're very scaled up to be providing a responsive service around the clock at our community.
And it looks like you do have some really positive stats on your website for the overdoses that have been avoided because of your assistance.
Yeah, it's well over 200, certainly in this site. But then beyond that, the naloxone distribution program, Shay, you might want to talk about its impact on the community.
Yeah, so I think too, I mean, just going back to CarePoint, if a client is wanting naloxone through CarePoint, that is quite accessible to them as well, which is great. But even just stats, we offer the naloxone program to many community services.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, so the ministry has, kind of set it up that community organizations such as shelters, withdrawal management programs, community access centers, AIDS community organizations, and outreach teams, it's very important for them to have naloxone to distribute to clients because many clients are already accessing those services who are at risk for overdose. And so again, working very closely with community partners to ensure they have the supply they need. And this also got now expanded to police and fire. And so yes, police and fire in the City of London and Middlesex County all carry naloxone as well. And just looking at the stats of 2019, there was over 650 reversals. So that means that's been used 650 times. That's a lot of people that have been saved. And then over 5,000 kits have been given out. So really important that, when we kind of started this program in 2013-14, there was hardly any interest and very little uptake.
Is that because people didn't know the value of it and what it could do? Or
I think that was part of it, but I also think there's been other program changes now that it's nasal versus injectable. Plus then, as the program's expanded and become more accessible, and again, educating the community that this is a free kit, it's accessible, it's not difficult to use, and it actually saves a life, I think is now really starting to resonate with our community.
Is it something that would ever be in high schools? I'm sure the opioid crisis is affecting high school students as well.
I think there's always, we educate anyone, so anyone who requires any education of what does an overdose look like, how would you use naloxone, we will do that anywhere. Again, we work with different organizations. If they don't qualify and they're really interested in it, they can review it with their policies and procedures and their kind of administration, and then they may need to purchase that. So
right.
Yeah, I also think that the uptake as it's grown from when it first started is also the heightened awareness of the opioid crisis, right? I mean, that has been a main frontline story in our media now that is a very real issue, not only in London, Ontario, but across the province, across the country, and beyond. So I think just the awareness of it is...
And even for anybody, I mean, whether you're homeless or not, or whether you're a teen living in your parent, I mean, it affects everybody across all borders.
It does.
It really doesn't discriminate, does it?
No.
So do you think that the community of London has the awareness of really what the crisis is in London as far as the opioid crisis?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of coverage and discussion and dialogue about this issue in our community. Certainly the consumption treatment service has been very high profile in the media, but also just the presence of homelessness and mental health and addiction, all of those things intersect together that also are part of navigating the overdose crisis that we're experiencing. So I think our community is very well informed about what's happening, with a lot of strategies trying to look at how are we going to address these things.
Well, and I think that's the big thing. How do you address it? I mean, some people would say it doesn't affect them, right? But it does. It really essentially affects everybody. Some people would drive downtown and then drive back into their suburb area and not think about it anymore. But the reality is it affects all of us. So what would you say to people who maybe think it doesn't affect them? And how should people, get more involved in this? And what can you do to give back and help?
Well, one of the things I would offer is that, when you think about who you're connected to, who you know in the community, everyone is connected to someone who may be struggling with a tight grip of addiction. We all know how pervasive mental health is in our community. So the idea that this doesn't impact me, it actually impacts all of us. When our community isn't well, it's a challenge for everyone. And I think that people are beginning to understand that. So in terms of advice, people can get involved in organizations that support these folks through volunteerism. People can also educate themselves as to what's going on. One of the things that's happened in London is there's the Middlesex London Community Drug and Alcohol Strategy. And that was a process that led to a consultation, if you will, in our community to get people's perspectives. So that was a highly engaged process that resulted in a report with a whole series of recommendations to address this issue. People can go to the Middlesex London Drug and Alcohol Strategy website, read that information. It's a really good eye-opener about what's happening in our community and some of the solutions that we see to address these issues.
Right, that's great. Okay. What would you say are some of the misconceptions around these safe sites, the supervised sites?
Well, I think we've seen a lot of the benefits. So I think, one of the rationales of why we looked at opening a site was, decreasing infectious disease, right? So when we started the consultation process, a lot of the education was sharing where we are. We were experiencing an HIV crisis at the time amongst people who inject drugs. We were, experiencing increased overdose deaths and people not connecting to services until they were too ill, and people accessing the hospital and if having an endocarditis, which was costing millions of dollars. So once you educated the community about that and some of these benefits, again, it has to be a multi-pronged strategy. It cannot just be a safe injection site would solve all the solutions.
Right.
But I think what we've seen at the site, and I'm sure Brian can comment as well, is that the infectious disease rate, HIV crisis is no longer. It is actually decreasing. That's partially because of the site, not fully, and the infectious disease rate. It's an opportunity to educate how people can use drugs more safely, right?
I mean, when we talk about the consumption treatment service or the care program as an overdose prevention response, but it's also an HIV hepatitis C prevention response. And I think people forget that. For the 30,000 people that have come through our doors since we opened, every time they're in that environment, it's HIV prevention in action, if you will.
Right.
That's what's happening. But your question about misconceptions as well, as I think another misconception is that we are enabling drug use. We are enabling injection drug use by providing this service. And really what we're enabling is connection to care, because these individuals were already using substances outside in the public realm, at home, in the parks, in stairwells. We're trying to bring people in to connect them, to provide the support for safer injection and overdose prevention, but also what other needs? Housing, addiction supports. And that's where this group, I think Shea opened part of our conversation with this group doesn't necessarily connect well to traditional healthcare responses. And this is a non-traditional harm reduction approach that actually is successful in bringing people into care and into care for the long term.
Right, and safer for the people who need the care, safer for the community.
That's exactly right.
Right, and I think that's often the misconception is people think it's unsafe to provide these service when in fact it's actually safer for your community to provide this service. And so we had touched on that, how homelessness and poverty, how they overlap in that crisis. Like, where do you start to support all this? I mean, I know you start with the site, but so are you constantly working and creating programs with other groups to be supporting the needs of everyone who walks through the door?
Yeah, I think our community has come together recognizing we do have a crisis on all of those fronts and we need to have a response. I think one of the key things that I think is well understood at this point in time is we have a housing crisis. We have a crisis where there's not affordable housing, there's not appropriate housing with supports for people that need it, and we have to build in our community the capacity to support people to get them housed and look at different models. So if we can move people from the streets into housing, either housing with support or supportive housing or just getting people housed where they can be independent, that's going to take us a long way in the right direction, where when someone is stably housed from a housing first lens, then they can begin to look at what are the other issues that they need to take care of or they want to take care of. Because when you're living in a state of chaos and you're on the street and you don't know what's going to happen to you from hour to hour sometimes.
Survival is terrifying.
Your survival. You can't focus on how do I tend to my issues that I want to tend to.
Right. And those are there people, is there an organization who's currently working on the street directly with homeless, that would be the Homeless Coalition?
But I actually think, we work very closely with community partners, but there's lots of different models because not one model will necessarily work for an individual.
Right.
There's the outreach team, so there is an actual outreach team that is street level. So if there's a client who,
because not everyone's going to make it to the front door.
You're right.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And just even building a trusting relationship. I think that would be the key, is that if you can find someone that can engage with that client and build that trusting relationship, then what can happen is that then they will start to access service. And some, they might not even know how to access. How do I first navigate this system, right? It's very difficult to access different services if you don't even know how to navigate it.
For sure, and I think that comes back to your point of just survival.
Yes.
I know most people who are in those situations, it's moment by moment, right? They're not thinking about paying your rent or your phone bill. It's how am I going to survive today, eat today, stay warm.
That's exactly right. And stay warm, absolutely. In the middle of winter, staying warm is you see all of these campsites that are in our community. A couple of other services worthy of mention is, the Street Level Women at Risk Initiative, which is working with women who are involved in the sex trade, helping them get housed, helping move them from the street, helping get them into safer environments. That's a partnership with Addiction Services Thames Valley, the City of London, and community partners supporting marginalized, vulnerable women to get off the street and be stably housed. Loving Cares has been doing this in our community for many years. Shea talked about the Health Units Outreach Team. They've had a huge impact in changing the trajectory of the HIV outbreak for people who inject drugs by getting people connected to care, getting them the medication they need. A lot of positive things are going on in our community, but so much more needs to be done.
Absolutely, but just talking about it and creating awareness for people watching is a great step as well. And even talking about the bereaved families, I mean, you talk about the kids who have lost parents, and that support, it does start at that age, right? Like all of these services within the community are so tied into each other and support one another. Do you foresee a second site, or is one site enough for London?
Well, that's a great question. We certainly are looking at a mobile site to complement the fixed site, and so we're working with the province on that. But right now, we're looking at trying to stabilize a permanent location for the site of the CarePoint program.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, we thank you for the work that you're doing, because you guys are doing amazing stuff, and thank you so much for coming and speaking with us today. Hopefully, we've created more awareness and education for the community, and I know there's lots of work to be done. But
thanks for your interest in our work.
No, thank you for speaking with us.
Our pleasure.
All right, we hope that today has been informative and truly given you an honest look at the incredible resources and work being done in our community. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you. It was a great speaking with you guys. I feel like it's been a good educational process for me as well. So thank you so much. I'm Vanessa Rempel, and this was Kickback, brought to you live by Rogers TV London. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Add some to your life.
Let's go.
CTV Sci-Fi Channel free preview is on.
I'm bringing the party to you.
The hell are you doing out here, Picard? Saving the galaxy?
Fancy a trip in the box?
The crisis has begun.
I am attempting to save the multiverse. Explore our universe.
Engage.
CTV Sci-Fi Channel free preview on now.